The wind had a particular sound that morning. Low, dragging, like boots across church floors after a funeral. It moved through the frost-bitten branches and nudged against the boards of the ranch house like an old regret that wouldn't leave a man alone. Nolan Carver stood at the edge of what had once been someone's dream. The land spread wide, dusted in hoarfrost and rumor. A foreclosed ranch bought for 50 cents, signed over to a man the town pitted too much to despise. He'd buried his wife the spring prior. Buried his name somewhere deeper still. Now, all he had left was silence, and this ranch that no one wanted. He opened the door expecting emptiness. What he found instead was heat. Faint but real. The dull orange pulse of a stove fire, the dry scent of burnt coffee grounds, and something else, breath. 7 pairs of eyes turned toward him like startled deer in a clearing. They didn't scream. They didn't run. They didn't beg. The eldest, her posture straight and voice like old hymns sung at dusk, said plainly, "We're not squatters. We're survivors. But we'll leave if you say so." Nolan looked at them, clothes stitched and restitched, skin too thin for the cold, dignity clinging to them like last year's leaves. He stepped backward, not forward. Closed the door with both hands, slow. Then stood on the porch, staring out at the pale white world, unsure of who was trespassing on whom. That night, he brought in extra firewood. Didn't say a word. Just leaned it against the wall near their room. The next morning, his coat was mended, thread rough but careful. It was Tess, the girl with the half-smile that trembled before it bloomed, who placed it there. He knew it by the lavender scent stitched into the sleeves. The town was quick, as towns are, to find poison in another man's kindness. By the end of the week, whispers crawled into the saloon, the mercantile, and the chapel. Carver's got women hidden in that house. 7 of 'em. A harem, some say. Godless. Shameless. Probably thieves. Nolan kept quiet. He always had. Since his wife passed, words felt like nails. It took something out of you to put them down. The girls didn't speak of leaving. Not out loud. But they watched him like someone watches a ledge they're afraid to walk. Josie, youngest but for Nettie, lingered near the kitchen doorway each evening, fingers brushing a broken book spine. Franny, who limped from an old injury, nodded to him once while soaking her foot in a basin warmed with stove water. None of them asked for more firewood. They just accepted it when it came. He began to learn their names in fragments. Mercy, who spoke the least but carried the most. She rationed food, mended clothes, and stared into the fire like it owed her something. Willa, whose words were sharp enough to split kindling. She didn't trust men, nor women who trusted men. Nettie, who was always cold and never let go of a locket with nothing inside. Elora, who had bruises that were fading but not forgotten. Franny, who limped but moved faster than shame ever could. Tess, who laughed like it cost her and smiled like it hurt. And Josie, who read poetry aloud when she thought no one listened. They cooked in silence, cleaned in silence, slept in silence. But there was music in that silence, notes of survival, of women who had lost everything except their refusal to disappear. One evening, the preacher came by. Rode in slow like guilt itself. Nolan met him at the edge of the yard. "I've heard talk," the preacher said, not unkindly. 7 girls? In your house. They were here before me. That doesn't change what folks see. Then they can stop looking up. The preacher adjusted his gloves. "You're risking your soul. I already buried it." The preacher left without blessing the house. But someone, maybe Josie, maybe Mercy, left a sprig of pine on the windowsill that night. It smelled of something living. The girls cleaned the place up. Not for him, never for him, but because clean places made the cold seem less cruel. Curtains appeared on windows. The pantry was filled in ways he didn't understand. Once, Willa slaughtered a chicken and left it on the back steps with a folded note, "We ain't freeloaders." He never replied. But he fixed the back gate and left a tin of sugar beside the stove. Then came the man from town. Drunk. Mean in the way only cowardice can be. He rode out on a Tuesday, boots muddy, mouth full of bile. "You sellin' company, Carver?" Nolan didn't answer. The man stepped too close to Tess, fingers on her wrist like he owned her. Franny screamed. Nolan moved. Slow. Deliberate. The way storms move when they mean it. He stood between the man and the girls. "No one touches anyone here," Nolan said, voice quiet as snowfall. The man spat, cursed, and rode off. That night, Mercy placed a second blanket over Nolan's shoulders while he kept vigil on the porch. He didn't look at her. Didn't need to. That kind of gratitude had no face. Over the weeks, the ranch became something it hadn't been in years, alive. It was in the way Mercy organized the jars. The way Nettie braided Elora's hair. The way Nolan planted a new fence post line, not because he had cattle, but because the fence was broken, and broken things deserved mending. Each girl began, in her own way, to tell him who she'd been before she came here. Mercy had taught piano. Her hands still remembered even if the keys were gone. Willa had been sold by her uncle. She spoke of it like someone describing a storm long past, but her eyes never left the door. Franny had once dreamed of being a seamstress. Her limp came from a staircase, not a dream. Nettie's locket had never held a picture. "Just hoped someday it would," she said once, almost smiling. He never asked, never probed, but he listened. And then the storm came. Real snow. Biting, heavy, and wet. The kind that buries roads and secrets. Nolan was fixing the henhouse roof when he saw them. 3 men riding hard through the snow, spines curved like snakes. One was the drunk. Another had rope on his saddle. They dismounted like wolves circling a lamb. "We've come for what's ours," one of them said. "We got claims." "You don't own people," Nolan answered, quiet. "They ain't people. They're runaways. Whores." Behind him, he heard a window slide open. The girls were watching. "You best go," Nolan said, hand near his rifle but not on it. They didn't. A shot rang out. Not his. It was Mercy. Standing on the porch, rifle braced on the rail, eyes steady. Her hands shook, but the barrel did not. The men scattered. One dropped his rope. Another cursed and ran. The drunk fell off his horse trying to flee. The snow drank the noise and left only steam. Nolan turned, looked up at Mercy. "Where'd you learn to shoot?" "You," she said simply. "Just by watching." He nodded once, then sat down hard on the porch. The cold found his ribs, but his bones felt warm. Mercy knelt beside him. "You're bleeding. Nick on the side. Nothing deep. I'll fix it." Willa handed her thread and cloth. No words passed between them. Elora stood behind them, shoulders square. Tess was crying, but not from fear. That night, they all ate together. Same table. One lantern. Silence, but the kind that comes after storms pass. Nolan looked at them. 7 women who had come with nothing, and now sat like they'd always belonged. Like furniture carved into the house's very bones. He did not ask them to stay. He never would. But Franny poured him an extra cup of coffee. And Mercy said softly, "We'll help mend the fence tomorrow." He didn't answer. Just nodded. Outside, the snow began again. But it was gentler now. They say homes are built with timber, nails, and sweat. But that night, Nolan Carver learned the truth. Some homes are built with silence. With standing between danger and the defenseless. With hands that mend coats. With stolen girls who refuse to stay broken. And some fences, once mended, never fall again. Now, folks, you may think this tale ends here, but let me tell you something soft and sure. They stayed. Not because he asked, but because he didn't. And what bloomed in that frostbitten land was not love in the way folks talk about it, but something quieter. Something deeper. A choosing. A kindness that did not announce itself. A fire that stayed lit, long after the winds moved on. But before I go, let me leave you with this. The next morning, Nolan opened the door to find Nettie sitting in the snow. She was holding her locket open. And inside, at last, was a drawing. A rough sketch of 7 women and 1 man, seated by a fire. No names. No titles. Just family. Now click the story on screen. It's even more haunting than this one, and I swear, you won't forget it before your own fire burns out tonight.